Hey guys, this is a Payday 2 Big Oil Day 3 tutorial on how to pick your engine right the first time in the basement of the lab scientist's house. Basically, you have to know exactly what you're looking for on each engine, and I pretty much labeled that out here in a screenshot. This is what a typical engine looks like. There's where the orange arrow is pointing, that's the hydrogen tank, the big blue tank on the bottom. It's not always on the floor. Sometimes it's on the desk. They could be anywhere, but there's always a hydrogen tank. And the only difference between that hydrogen tank and all the other ones is how many nozzles are on the top of it. And you'll find out how many nozzles you need on the top of your hydrogen tank later. And I'll explain how you find out. But it's all about a process of elimination. Like, this one has 3 nozzles coming out of the top of it, connected to those rusty things on the right. Sometimes you might only need 2, and sometimes you might only need 1. So if you know you need 3, you pretty much just look around the room. Okay, only these 3 have 3, so you just keep eliminating it. Then you have where the blue arrow is pointing at the gauge. There's going to be a computer that I show you how to use later that tells you like a PSI number, and it's going to be less than greater than, but I'll go over it later, and it's going to give you like a number. And basically, you can use a process of elimination the same way on this, because you'll know exactly which area your gauge needs to be pointing, or at least what number. And lastly, we have the gas tank on the left where the green arrow is pointing. Basically, every tank has one of these these little tilted small tanks. They're either green, yellow, or blue, like this one. And basically, they differ in color based off what gas you have, and you find that out later, either through the intel or through the way I'll show you. Okay, now that we know each part of the tank that we need to look for, basically, you want to scavenge the house for this notepad. This notepad is going to tell you exactly what gas you need to use. In this case, this notepad says nitrogen on the top left. Don't mind all the numbers and nonsense around it. All you need to look for is like that one word. It's either going to be nitrogen, deuterium, or helium. They're not always going to be in the top left of the notepad. I forget where each one's labeled, but in this case it's the top left. And the notepad itself will tell you what gas you need to use. Sometimes this notepad is not in the house though. If it's not, just keep using process of elimination on the other stuff, which I'll show you how to use. But if you do have it, basically you just walk down the stairs to the basement and find this whiteboard. The whiteboard's always the same. Nitrogen equals yellow, deuterium equals blue, and helium equals green. These represent the color of that tilted can that the green arrow was pointing at in the beginning of the video. So the one in the picture was blue, which means that can was deuterium, but we have a nitrogen clipboard here that says it needs to be yellow. Obviously it's not like the same game, I'm just showing you how to do it. So that nitrogen pad said we need a yellow tilted can. And so you go around the room looking for a yellow tilted can, and all the ones that aren't yellow are pretty much not the engine. Alright, now that we have the gas tank covered, and you've eliminated everything that's not the same color as your gas tank, you want to find this computer. And it's basically different than all the other ones. There's only one in the basement that looks like this. It has a big square with horizontal and vertical lines in it. And on the top right of that square is a number that says less than 5812 psi. Now this number could be completely different. It could be like 5892, or I don't know. It could be so much different than this one. The things you need to look at are if it's less than or greater than. See, it's pointing to the left, that's a less than sign. If there's an arrow pointing to the right at the end of the number, that's a greater than sign. So, and I know I shouldn't have to explain that, but just in case. And so basically what you do with this number is you multiply it by 0.7 and 0.1 on either your Windows calculator or whatever kind of calculator you can get your hands on, but basically that'll convert this number from PSI to bar, because they're measurements, for you if you don't know that either. And those gauges on the tanks, they read in bars, so this number doesn't help you until you convert it to bar. And the number will give you something around like the 300s or 400s low, like 405 for example. And since this one's a less than, say it came out to 405, it'd be less than 405. You'd look for any gauge where the arrow is pointing at a number less than 405. If it's at like 450, that gauge on that engine is way too high for what you need, so you eliminate that one. And it'll pretty much eliminate like 4 or 5 of the engines in the basement easily, and that's how you get the gauge working. Alright, last but not least, we have the hydrogen tank, the big blue one where the orange arrow was pointing in the beginning. Basically, you scavenge the house for this clipboard before you get into the basement, because it will take you a little bit to get down there, so you might as well find it. It's always in the house, it's always there, it's a necessity thing. It'll never not be there. And it'll basically say H, 2xH, or 3xH. This one obviously just has an H, and that represents only one hydrogen. And then the numbers before it, like 2xH and 3xH, they represent how many hoses are connected to the top of the tank. So if it just says H, there's only one hose connected to the top of that big blue tank. If it says 2XH, that means there's 2 hoses connected to the top. And if it says 3XH, that means there's 3 hoses connected to the top. Now this picture and the example I had in the beginning don't go together, because obviously if you remember, the big blue tank had 3 hoses coming out of the top of it, which would have meant it was a 3XH clipboard, and this one's only H. So obviously 2 different games, but it's just to teach you how to do it. So it's fairly simple. You'll know how to do it before you even get into the basement. So the first thing I like to do is I know exactly how many things need to be connected to the hydrogen tank, and that's the first thing I look for. And I could pretty much eliminate like 80% of all engines just by knowing how many things need to be connected to the hydrogen tank. Alright, so if you guys kept up and you understand how to do it, you'll understand that this tank is actually the right tank with all the evidence that I found in the examples before. The gauge is less than 4 or 5, you can see that to the left. The big blue tank on the top only has 1 hose coming out of the back of it, and that was, our clipboard only said H, so that's 1. And there's a yellow tank, I'm not sure if you can see it in the screenshot very well, but it's on the right of the big blue tank over my gun, and that represents the nitrogen that was on the clipboard. And yeah, so that's how you find your perfect tank. And it's this process of elimination. You'll find some things more important than the other. Sometimes you don't even need to use the computer, and sometimes you don't, you know, if you don't have the clipboard that tells you the gas, you probably sometimes don't even need it. But yeah, it's pretty simple, and hope you guys get your achievements by the knowledge of this video. Thanks for watching.